Orleans.
Okay. Joe, let's start off with, what is your name?
My name is, wait a minute.
Sure. Would you like some water?
Yeah, I'm gonna,
Get some water for this.
I can go for a while.
Okay. All right. Your name and when and where were you born?
My name is Joseph R. Beyrle. I was born in Muskegon, Michigan in 1923, 25th of August.
And what was your high school like?
I went to St. Joseph's High School, and I was taught by Dominican nuns for 12 years.
When you got out of high school, did you immediately get into the service?
I had a scholarship to go to Notre Dame, which I went down, registered and everything. And when I seen that everybody was going in the service, plus the fact that I was 19 years old when I graduated because I didn't pass from the first to second grade because I couldn't speak English well enough. We spoke German at home. But
On Pearl Harbor, where were you?
after church, we used to go down to a pool hall, hang out, the hub we called it, and Charlie Weitenheimer owned the place, and he had a radio on and heard about Pearl Harbor, so we all took a pool cue and marched around the pool table, not knowing that within a very short time we'd be in the service ourselves.
Now, did you join or were you drafted?
No, I joined. I came home from Notre Dame, and I figured they'd get me in the draft, so I volunteered. And when I went to Fort Custer, or Camp Custer at that time, there's a guy gave us a pitch on the paratroops, and I volunteered for the paratroops.
I think it's important to note that we know about paratroopers today, but in those days, this was brand new.
Yes, I came home after I'd qualified, and I was stopped in Chicago. They wanted to know what army I was from, because we bloused our boots, you know, and we had jump boots, shiny jump boots, and a hat cocked on our head.
Now, why would you want to join a brand new operation in the military where you had to jump out of airplanes?
Well, I'll tell you a little story. We trained in Toccoa, Georgia. The Army sent a team of psychiatrists down to interview us to find out why we would jump out of perfectly good airplanes, and 95% of the men told them for the extra $50.
What was your motivation?
That was that was partly mine too. That was very new at that time. The first 40 times I rode in an airplane, I jumped out of it.
I would love to get into the whole training and all that, but fortunately your good friend Bill Sefton has told us about the extensive training that you went through.
Yeah, they went. The 501 followed us into Toccoa. Although they didn't have, Colonel Sink was our commander, but the commander they had was as tough as, and the parachute training was very, very, very tough. Everything done on double time.
I think it's important to note too that although a large number of men joined to become paratroopers, not all that many became paratroopers. Was there a high washout rate in your group?
Usually you washed out before you got to Benning.
Okay.
If you dropped out of a run or anything, you were evaluated, and most of them went to W Company. That was the washout company in Toccoa.
Now, once you graduated, what was your first assignment?
I went through parachute school like Bill Sefton did in a unit, the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment, and I was in I Company. And that's the only outfit I ever served in.
Were these guys from all over the country?
all over the country.
When did you realize where you were going to go in terms of the war? Were you given a notice that you're going to transfer overseas, or?
Yes, we went through our training after jump school. I stayed back and went to radio school and demolition school, and then I joined the unit in Camp Mackall, North Carolina, and that summer we went on maneuvers, in Tennessee maneuvers they called it, and then we came back from that, and then we moved from McCall to Fort Bragg and processed to go overseas, and then we ended up in England on the 17th of September 1943, 1 year to the day I joined the military.
Did you have any idea what your assignment was going to be, where you were going to go?
No.
Okay.
They called that bigot. You maybe heard that word. If you were bigoted, you know that the invasion was going to be in France. And it started with Eisenhower, and there were very, very few people. We did not know we were going into France until the night 2 days before, when we saw a sand table where we were going to jump and what our objective was.
Give us an idea what this sand table you're talking about. Is this it's a large room where you're being briefed?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a
Describe
briefing.
the sand table.
Pardon?
Describe the sand table.
Well, the sand table was just just like the terrain was going to be in France. We jumped in France right at about 5 miles in from Utah Beach.
But this training session, this briefing session, are you talking about it's like a topographical map?
Yes,
Or
a
was it actually-
topographical
okay,
map.
all right.
And they pointed out where we should land, where we would assemble, and then we knew we were going to have to fight to get to the bridges. So it was all laid out.
You know, it's interesting because I've interviewed other veterans, not paratroopers, and with rare exception, they had no idea where they were going, but at least you had some idea what the terrain was going to look like. And did you feel like you were properly trained to
Oh,
go
yes.
into your first jump?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about your first jump. Was it early in the morning?
No, it was about 9 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock. I don't even remember.
And this is in England.
Pardon?
You're in England?
No, my first jump was in Fort Benning.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm talking about the first jump into Europe. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
into Europe.
Yeah.
Yes, I jumped in twice before D-Day with the OSS carrying gold for the Free French. You know,
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that mission, the first one.
First one. Well, I was called to battalion headquarters, and I was a technician, 4th grade, a radio operator. And my commanding officer of the battalion, Colonel Wolverton, says, I volunteered you for a mission into France. And I says, what am I going to do? He says, that man sitting over there will take over from here. He will brief you, take you where you have to go, and you do what he says. So we were at Ramsbury, which was about 40 miles southwest of London, caught a train at Hungerford and went to Middlewallop. From Middlewallop we went to, that was an airfield, we went to Bournemouth by train, and then I was briefed there that I was going to jump into France. I was told I was going to take a bandolier of gold coins. I would give it to the French. Once I landed, they would contact me. I had a password. They had to give the countersign. Then I would give them the bandolier of gold coins. and they would take over from there, and I was there for about 2 weeks each time.
Now, were you alone?
Yes,
Oh, so you're jumping in alone?
yes.
Oh, my goodness.
And,
You didn't speak French?
no,
Okay.
no, that's all right. Most of the people I dealt with in the underground spoke English.
Oh, good. All right. So, the drop into France the first time, was that a day drop, a night drop?
Night drop.
Night drop.
Both of them were night jumps.
Okay. So in effect, you're going into what is actually enemy territory.
Yes,
Meeting up with the French underground to deliver gold coins so they can use to further their cause, so to
Yes.
speak. Okay. Did you have, I know this is going to sound like a stupid question, Joe, but you're 20-some-odd years old at this time. Did you have any idea what kind of danger you were going into?
we were so highly trained in the briefing we got. It was going to be I can't come up with a word, but
Cakewalk?
cakewalk. And it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. In fact, I was there for about 14 days, and they just moved me from safe house to safe house. And the one time to get from one place to the other, they said, you ride this horse, and then if you Germans capture you, shoot the horse because he knows where you're going. I never had to do it.
How was your German, in terms of your language, how was your German?
I never
at
let
the
the
time?
Germans know that I spoke
Okay.
or I understood. I never spoke it because you understand it, it comes back to you. You understand it, and then you learn to talk it, but I never had an opportunity to do that.
Oh, yes.
Two-handed.
There you go.
Out.
All right. All right.
Well,
Yeah, you just set it down right there. So the two night drops into France, although looking back on it was pretty dangerous stuff. Actually, it went well. Your training held up, and you were able to accomplish the goal.
yeah, and I was there for about each time 10 to 14 days, and then they'd woke me up in the morning and says, you're going back to England. I says, how am I going to get there? And he said, well, the plane's going to land, and they will pick you up and fly you back. What I didn't know was that I was waiting on the edge of the field that the plane landed in, and before I could get on the plane, they refueled it. They had a horse and wagon and a tank on it, and they refueled the plane and got on the plane, rode back to Barmouth, and then I went back to my outfit. And the cover was while I was gone, because everybody wanted to know where I was. I had a brother who was serving in the Air Force in England, up north of us, and they concocted a story that I was given leave because my brother was sick and I had to visit him. And then the second time, the same thing. My brother took a turn for the worse and had to go up and visit him. And I was on the morning report every morning. They never showed me as being any place.
Why would they keep that from your own troops? It was that secret of a mission, I guess.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That was one of the things in the briefing. Under no circumstances, if I tell you, they have to kill you.
Yeah. Really? Yeah, literally. Yeah. Now, your unit then, after these two jumps, what did you do? What happened next? Now we're talking about preparing for D-Day.
All right, I got back about first part of May, and I went back to my outfit, and we made 2 practice jumps. We call them dry runs, and we jumped in England. But the terrain and everything was similar to what we were going to encounter in France, but I didn't know it at the time. We didn't know that's what, it wasn't, see, each time we jumped, those 2 jumps, we'd moved to a marshalling area, they call it. We're locked in, we can't talk with the outside, can't write letters or anything. You load up on planes, you fly and you jump, then you go back, you're picked up, and you go back to Ramsbury. And that, the people's, we kept moving in and out of there, so when we moved for the fourth or fifth time like that, they never, you know, they didn't, it was just an ordinary thing.
Now, how many men are we talking about? How many airplanes are we talking about in your immediate group?
All right, my regiment consisted of about 2,000 men. In a parachute regiment, there were 3 battalions. Each battalion had 4 companies, headquarters, and the letter company. I was in I company. They started with A company, then each one, and then they had a regimental headquarters company. And that was men and officers. At Toccoa, to get 2,000 men, he interviewed 5,000 men. And it was very tough. Why do you want to be in the paratroops? You didn't tell him. It was the colonel. You didn't tell him for the $50. You told him it was an elite outfit. And that's why you want to be in the paratroops.
How old were you about this time?
19.
Oh, this is still 19 years old?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. D-Day, of course, was one of the best kept secrets of the war. When did you find out you were actually going to be part of that mission?
When the third time we went to the marshalling area, when they pulled out the sand tables and they gave us live ammunition, French francs, and a French phrase book.
Did you have any idea what the scope of this operation was?
No.
Okay.
All we knew is what our operation was. I learned from reading history like you did how big it was. I did know that the 82nd, there was going to be 2 American Airborne Divisions. There was going to be a British Airborne Division jump into France, but I did not know
About the infantry and all
No,
the Higgins
or the
boats,
beaches
the
and everything.
beaches, you didn't know any of that?
No.
Okay, all right. Give us a visual image of the day that you did drop into that operation.
Well,
Was it morning, early morning?
No,
Okay.
night.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was, I jumped at 1:30 in the morning.
Okay.
And we took off from Exeter, which is southwest part of England, and we formed up with the rest of them. And there was a regiment, you had about 17 men in a plane, in a stick we called it, that jumped. 17 men.
Okay. So you're all lined up in a transport aircraft, the
C-47.
Okay. There's a red and a green light
Yep,
that lets you know when to jump.
yes.
Where were you in the line? I mean, in terms
I
of
was
17.
4.
Okay.
I was number 4. The company commander, I was in company headquarters, by the way, within the I company. The company commander was a jump master, the communications sergeant. I got to stop and think.
Sorry.
Yeah, communications sergeant was behind him. There was one man in between, Manuel Barrios, and then me.
Okay. And your job in this was what?
To form up and make our way to the bridges, which is about a mile from where we were supposed to land.
Okay.
We jumped about 5 seconds too soon. I landed on a church roof in St. Côme-des-Maux. Had 5 seconds, I would have hit the drop zone. I maybe wouldn't be here because they had the drop zone zeroed in. And
Well, it's, Joe, I've never had the experience of landing on a church roof, so
Well,
if you could tell me what that was like.
what happened was I landed on a church roof. I got the opening shock and hit the church roof at about the same time. We jumped at 400 feet. We were being shot at. When you're that low, it was supposed to be 700 feet. But this was the first trip for the pilots, you know, the troop carriers and everything. And then they were shooting at me. Once I came down, they were shooting at me from the steeple. I hit the church, I slid down, and then they couldn't get at me anymore. And then there were planes following me, so they were shooting at them.
Now, when you hit the roof, though, your parachute is floating down. You hit the roof. Did it catch or something? So you're hanging, or because I'm picturing you falling to the floor, falling to the ground.
Yeah, I slid down to the canopy went on one side, but the weight I had on me drew me off because the roof was pretty steep, and I slid off and dropped.
What did you drop into?
Into a cemetery.
Oh my gosh.
See all these churches over there. This church I landed on was built in 1912. The 12th century.
Okay, that's a big difference.
12th century. That's yeah.
Were you injured?
No.
I mean,
I didn't have time to get injured. No, that's the other thing. Once we got to England, they taught us how to tumble. When you're jumping at 700 feet, you can't have no time, so you relaxed and land like a sack of flour. That's not the word, but I don't use that word. You relaxed. You might get bruised up, but you wouldn't get any broken bone.
Okay. All right. So once you landed into the cemetery, what did you do? You gathered up your
No, I cut myself out of the chute. I was carrying a 30-pound radio I weighed about 180 pounds, and I had maybe 125 pounds of equipment. I had a 45, a Thompson submachine gun, and a folding stock carbine to start with. Then I carried a bandolier of 30 caliber. I carried two bazooka shells, and just everything and everything. I had about an additional 120 pounds. They had to have helpers to get us in the airplane.
Well, how'd you get up off the ground?
It wasn't easy. We helped one another.
So there were men that also landed in the cemetery area along with you? Or?
No,
Okay.
the guy that jumped right ahead of me, or the guy that jumped behind me, landed on a roof of a house across the street from where I landed.
You had mentioned earlier that with the delay, the delay that caused you to hit the church, if you had made your mark, you said something else would have happened? They were trained, they had guns trained on the area?
Well, we would have landed in a large field, and that would have been surrounded by a hedgerow, and the hedgerows were 8 foot high with growth on top of them. And the whole area was hedgerows.
And the Germans had the area controlled, and that they would have opened up on you if you would have landed there.
Yes. There was openings in them, and if you went through one of those openings, you were gone.
It's amazing how, in times like that, certain seconds determine whether or not you're here or you're not here.
Yeah. The roof coming down?
Yeah. That's all right, we'll plod through.
We'll be done in just a second. They just set up for us a couple things up there, so 1 minute and we'll be over.
We will redo this interview. I just want to get all this down for now, but we'll redo this interview. Shall we just go ahead?
Yeah, I'm picking it up, but I mean, it's not overpowering. So.
Well, as long as we get the words.
Yeah, you'll get the words.
Okay.
I can do some good wording.
All right.
Give you some
Give us an idea of, I always try to get a visual and an audio image of what you're going through. I can picture the parachutes coming down. I can picture the Germans are shooting flak at the airplanes, and the ground troops are shooting at the paratroopers, right? So you've got
Yes.
noise going on here. This is,
A lot
this
of
is
noise.
a loud racket.
Yes.
You've landed, you hit the roof, you come down, thank goodness you didn't break anything. The other guys are landing. Give us a visual image now of how you're kind of getting your bearings straight here. You're in a cemetery, what do you do next, and what's the next thing you see?
Well, once I hit the ground, I got out of my chute, got my radio, and put that on. It was like a backpack. And then I started to get out of the cemetery. I went over a small fence and went down and back of the houses, and then I got on the road, and when I hit the railroad, I found out I was going the wrong way.
Now, were there other men around you? Other
No, I
Americans? You're all alone.
never saw an American
Wow. All right.
till after I was captured.
Oh, okay. So you're heading the wrong direction on a railroad.
And then I went back the other way, down the same road, and I saw a substation, and I had some nitro starch, which I kept.
What's microstarch?
That's an explosive.
Oh, okay.
And put that on the generator and blew that, and then took off trying to get across Highway 13, which was the main highway from, it was, when I say highway, that's extravagant. It was a two-track, we call it.
Right. Was blowing up the generator part of what you were supposed to do, or is that something you improvised?
No, I just improvised. I saw it there, and I figured to put them out of business.
Okay.
Because the Germans were occupying France at
Oh,
that
yeah.
time.
Yeah. All right, so you blow up the generator,
Yeah.
and,
Then I start down the street,
right,
the ditch beside there, and I came to a hedgerow, and I found an opening in the hedgerow, and I went over it, and I was a guest of the German government. I landed in a machine gun position.
well, let's describe what happened. You walked through the hedgerow, and all of a sudden...
No, I didn't
German-
walk through. I went through over top of it.
Oh, okay, and then suddenly there's Germans surrounding you.
Yeah, I landed in a machine gun position.
Oh, okay. How many were there? How many Germans were there?
I would say 9 or 10.
Okay. So suddenly, out of the blue, you arrive, and thank goodness they didn't shoot you. They just, put their guns on you?
Yeah.
You put your hands up, or what happened?
Hans and Hawk, which I knew. And then they field strip you.
Okay.
They took, and I had a .45, so I thought I was an officer. Now, I acquired that .45, I liberated it out of an airplane. I was back in England. I was the last man on the stick one time, and the pilot had a .45 hanging up there, and I liberated it.
Let's go right to the point where you land into this machine gun nest. There's 8 or 9 Germans surrounding you with guns. They're now stripping all of your equipment off of you. Did you understand anything they were saying?
Not very much,
Okay.
no.
Your German was pretty rusty at that
Yeah.
time. But you're probably catching snatches of this or that
Yes.
and whatnot. Did you have any, did you feel like, okay, I'm a prisoner now, or do you think they're going to kill me?
Well, I didn't know. We were not, all I knew was that I would give them my name, rank, and serial number. That's all I was obligated to do under the Geneva Convention. Then I was taken to an underground headquarters.
By jeep, by...
No, foot.
Now, meanwhile, there's still shooting going on, right?
All around,
All
yeah.
right, so you're part of this little pocket now of Germans, but you're still part of this whole explosion?
Yeah, the 501, Bill Sefton was jumping maybe about that time. I don't know. Anyway, they took me to this underground headquarters in this orchard and took me down. They wanted to know what outfit I was in, and I kept giving my name, rank, and serial number. So they weren't getting any place, so they took me into the next room. And here sits this young lady.
Keep going.
Here sits this young lady, and she's telling me what outfit I'm in and about Colonel Wolverton, and she was...
She knew everything.
She knew everything, and she was unhappy because I would not dance with her in England. And she had to be a spy. We gave her the name in the book, Gretchen, but I don't know what her name was.
So you suspect that some USO dance or something that you did in England, you danced with some girl or somebody danced with somebody and...
Yeah,
Wow.
and that was quite a shock.
Yeah. Were you abused in any way? Did they beat you or hit you or anything like that? Or were they pretty...
Oh yeah, they kick you around, and that came later when I was at a professional interrogation center, and they worked me over real bad.
Is this Gestapo?
No, this was the troops.
Just general, the
Yeah.
German troops? Okay.
And all they gave them was my name, rank, and serial number, and I hadn't eaten for 15 days, and they brought a plate of food in. He said, now if you tell us what we want to know, you can have this food. They asked me a question. I gave them Beyrle 1608598 or something, whatever and they threw the plate of food on the floor, and I called a German officer, an SOB, and I end up in a German hospital. I come to some days later, and they're talking German, so I knew I wasn't dead because the angels don't speak German. That was supposed to be the name of the first book, but they changed the name on it.
So from the point where the woman in that room with your interrogators was shocking you that she knew so much, then they took you to this other area where
Well, we
were
went,
beaten.
we marched out of St. Côme de Mont.
We, as in you were not alone?
No, by that time they had collected prisoners.
Okay, so you're now with guys of your own unit?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
My own unit, and guys that landed on the beach and everything. And we were marching down the road to Carentan. We came under artillery fire, and I was blown in a ditch. I got a piece of shrapnel in my butt, and two of the guys in the ditch lost legs. We put tourniquets on them and pulled them up on the side, and the German patrol picked them up. And we started, there were three of us left, so we started for our objective again. And we were going
You're
down.
free now?
Yeah, there were
Oh,
five
so-
of us in the ditch,
Okay.
blown in the ditch, that I saw in our area. We put tourniquet on the two guys, pulled them up, and then one of them was Captain Harwick and Lambert Tucker were the other two guys. And Captain Harwick was the company commander out of H Company, the 506.
Do you know if they survived?
Yes,
Oh, outstanding.
yes.
Okay, good.
Harwick got back to the outfit. Tucker was a prisoner of war like I was, and I saw him in Lindbergh, I guess.
Well, all right, now let's get another visual image. There's a war going on, there's battle going on, explosions and whatnot, and so you in this ditch now, you've done the best you can for the two guys, you left them up there, they're later picked up by Germans, but you're now free. But you're stripped of, you have no ammunition, you have no guns, you have nothing, right?
No.
So where are you going? What are you doing?
Well, we start down the side of the road in the ditch, and our objective was to go under the river, the bridge, get to our objective. Well, I turned around and Harwick and Tucker were gone. So I tried what I was going to do, and I couldn't get under the get in under the bridge. I couldn't make it, so I turned around and went the other way, and I hit a hedgerow, and I went over the hedgerow like I did before, and landed in a German machine gun position. They had me again. And
Oh, my God.
this time they took my dog tags and everything, and they moved me back to Carentan eventually, and then to St. Lo, into what we called Starvation Hill. It was a monastery, and there were about 2,000 prisoners, American prisoners and British prisoners and everything. In that monastery, it had 12-foot walls around it. I was there for about 2 weeks, I think. And then they moved me to Alencon, France. In the meantime, they pulled me out of the monastery and took me, that's when the professional interrogation center at some chateau, when I called the German officer in SOB.
Okay, right.
And then I ended up in the hospital, and then I ended up, they finally took me to Alencon, France, and there were other prisoners there, and from there we went to Alencon to Chartres, marched us through Paris in a propaganda scene.
Well, let's stop there for a moment. Number one, the prisoners that you're gathered together now, are these the same basic group of D-Day people, or now?
Yes.
Okay, so it's still basically the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only guy that, later on, a guy that they brought a flyer in who had been shot down, he had his dress uniform on, and he was going to, had a date in London when he got back, and they shot him down.
Oh, God. Now, let's talk about the march through Paris, because we're not talking about the victorious march through Paris that happened
No.
later on.
This came, there's a picture of it in my book.
Okay.
Somebody sent me. They marched us through Paris, and then they loaded us on
Well,
boxes.
let's describe that. I mean, you know, the vision that people will have of the march through Paris is the triumphant American troops coming through and all that, but what was your experience? What happened?
They
when
threw garbage and everything at us.
So there were French lined up along the sides?
Yeah.
Are we talking about a big crowd here, or just spatterings of
Well, it
people?
was a stage deal. I'm sure it was a stage
okay.
deal. It was, there were too many people, you know, for,
Okay.
and
So there's German guards in the back with guns saying, all right, line up along here and throw this stuff out at these people.
yeah,
So they're throwing garbage, they're throwing,
yeah,
Okay.
everything.
all right. So you're just, what was the, I guess what I want to put is, what was the demeanor of the men? Would you just march through it with a straight
We
ahead?
marched
just
and
let it
kept
happen?
going, yeah.
All right, okay. So it doesn't matter if you got hit in the head with a tomato or whatever, you just
Yeah.
kept going?
Yeah, you wiped it off, kept going.
Okay.
There was somebody prodding you with a bayonet, too.
Okay.
That helped.
You see, Joe, I guess what I'm trying to do is to get a more visual image, because even though you may write about it in a book, it's the real visual image of these men walking straight forward. They're being prodded by bayonets, people throwing stuff at them. And so you make it through that. Where did they take you to? Where did they march
They
you to?
take us to a railroad station, load us in the box cars, 40 and 8 cars. They put 50 men in a car. They were, you've heard of the 40 and 8.
Yeah.
40 men or 8 horses. Well, there were 50 of us. And we locked us in for 7 days and 7 nights.
Were you fed?
No.
I don't want
And
to get gross here, but what about relieving yourself and whatnot?
we just, pretty soon the pot was full in there. And you didn't have much in you by that time,
Yeah,
too.
that's true. Yeah.
About the second day out, we were strafed, and my car, at least 10, 12 guys were killed outright. We maybe had another 15, 20 wounded, some of them very seriously. And then we were in that car for 5 more days until we hit Lemberg, Germany.
You had no way of treating these guys? You had
Well,
no-
we treated them the best we could. We
Sure.
took shirts if we had any. A lot of them had puncture wounds and stuff. And some of them died, some of them hoped they'd die. And then once we got to Lemberg, they took the ambulatory people out, and I don't know what happened to the other ones. You know, you were a prisoner, and they had dogs there that was nipping at you. We marched about 4 miles to Lindbergh, and we were registered as prisoners of war there at that time.
But you don't have your dog tags, you have no identification whatsoever? Okay.
And I got a German dog tag.
Oh, they wrote out your name on it?
Yeah, they had my name on it and everything, and my number was 80213. There's certain numbers you never
Always
forget.
remember. Did they give you a chance to bathe or get cleaned
Oh,
up?
they deloused us, as
Yeah,
we
'cause I was
call
gonna say,
it.
you must have stunk like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, going into St. Lo, we were strafed, and we were riding in trucks, and the plane had come down, American plane had come down and looked to see. Thing wasn't marked, and then they'd go around, and second time they'd fire. And then we'd get out, and this one guy went into an indentation, and it was where an outhouse had been blown out. And he happened to be in my boxcar. But we all smelled.
Yeah.
And then we were in a room similar to this, we're ceiling this high, and we were not sure when they took all of our clothes and everything, and we were not sure whether it was going to be water come out of those jets or gas, because we were aware of what was going on in Germany.
Where did you go, where were you transferred from there? Once you got deloused and you got, what, new uniforms? You got prisoner uniforms? What?
No, American, we always had American uniform. They never give us, and then we were moved from there. Lindbergh, we went to 4B at Mühlberg, Germany, and that was the first camp, prisoner of war camp in Germany in World War II. Very well organized, and we were there for about 2 weeks. And then on September 17th, 1944, we were moved from there, out of there, and the sergeant, who spoke pretty good English, told me, he says, because we had a patch, 101st patch on it, he told me, he says, you know, your outfit's jumping into Holland today. And this was late afternoon.
Yeah.
They jumped into Holland. And I was real surprised.
That was Sefton and Company.
Yeah, yes. And so then we went from,
I'm surprised that he would tell you that he would say that.
well, he did it boastfully.
Oh, okay.
He's, like he said, and we're going to kill all of you
Oh, okay. I got you.
or capture you.
Yeah.
So,
But that must have, I guess, maybe I shouldn't say this, but maybe you felt a certain sense of pride that they are jumping into Holland.
pardon?
Maybe you felt a certain sense of pride that the Americans
Oh, yes,
were jumping. Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
fact that they had conquered France now they're jumping into Holland.
Yeah, yeah. So what was this new camp like?
Well, 4B was really organized. The camp we went to from 4B was 3C, and that was in Poland. And we were the first Americans there.
We're talking about barbed wire fences?
Barbed wire fences, 12 foot high, and
Okay.
double strands with concertina in
The
between
razor
them.
wire,
Yeah.
What about the barracks themselves?
Oh, there were hutches. There was 24 guys to barracks, about half as big as this, 3 high bunk beds. And I was there from September until November when I escaped. By the way, once we got into Germany, we started getting Red Cross parcels. And the Red Cross parcels had dehydrated food. The biggest thing in them was cigarettes. They had anywhere from 5 to 7 packs of cigarettes. You never got a full parcel. You had a parcel for 2 or 4 or whatever. And I didn't smoke, so I accumulated cigarettes, plus the fact we used to play poker and shoot crap, and I won 60 packs of cigarettes in a crap game. And I bought my way out of the prison camp. I bribed the guard with 40 packs of cigarettes. He let me cut the wire while he was walking post. And then we went through the wire when his replacement went on.
How does one negotiate this sort of?
Well, you walk the wire.
Yeah.
And this guard, I found out, I would never talk German.
Right.
I found out he spoke English, and cigarettes were worth $50 a pack on the German black market at that time. Cigarettes for money in the camp. Use it for barter and everything. And I negotiated with him, and then the final negotiation was taken over by the man in the prison camp from the escape committee, and he paid off 20 packs of cigarettes, and we went through the wire, and then after, well, there were 3 of us in this escape.
All right.
We went through the wire, cut the wire, went through it, and down below the camp, there was a freight train run almost every evening, and we got in a boxcar, rode, it was going east, but it hit a junction, and we ended up in Berlin railroad yard some days later. And again, we were trying to make contact with the German underground. And there was an old man checking the journals of the cars, putting grease in them and stuff, and I went down and broke in English and Polish. I did speak some Polish because I grew up in a Polish neighborhood. I told them that we were American escaped prisoners of war and we wanted to make contact with the underground, and he'd have no part of it. So we waited a couple of days and went down. Another guy came through, and he said, yeah, he would help us, and he helped us. He took us to Gestapo headquarters. They had us for about 2 weeks and just beat the living hell out of us. I was semi-conscious most of the time. And then we got caught up in the politics of war, as they say. As an escaped prisoner of war, you're the property of the German Wehrmacht as a prisoner of war. And as an escaped prisoner of war, you're still, well, the Gestapo is a civilian police organization, so 3 officers came after the 3 of us, and they argued with the Gestapo, and I understood all they were saying, and they threatened to kill the Gestapo if they didn't turn over, and with that 12 other German soldiers showed up, and they took us back to the camp we escaped from, and 30 days solitary confinement on bread and water.
Is this the infamous cooler? They put you in the cooler?
It was cool. That was the coldest winter in that part of Europe they had in 100 years. You had to drink the water right away or it'd freeze on you. And
So you're in a small cubicle?
yeah,
Dark?
dark.
Completely dark. And you have just your shirt, your pants, you don't have a coat or anything like that?
No. I don't know how I survived, but again, we got caught up in the politics of war. That was a new prisoner of war camp, so the International Red Cross was making an inspection, so they had to let us out because it's against the rules to punish you for escaping. And I went back to my hutch, and they gave me extra food and everything. And then that was in November of '44. January of '45, we concocted another escape, This time, the same three. And we were out in the exercise yard, as we call it, and one brewer dropped, and we had a Schultz, who was a ferret in the compound. He just roamed the compound and listened, and we had 2 radios, by the way, in the compound. We knew how the war was going and everything.
Wow.
And somebody run and got Schultz and says, we have to get this man to the dispensary. He's having a heart attack. Somebody brought a stretcher. I got on one end and another guy got on the other end. And Schultz is yelling for the guard to open the gate. And then in the meantime, they came after Schultz because they started a diversionary fight in the yard. This was all planned. And Schultz dropped us, let us go through the gate, and we waited until the old man came with the horse and wagon and 3 barrels on it, which used to be almost daily. And we got in the barrels.
This is the underground helping you?
No,
Oh.
he didn't know he was helping us. We got in the barrels and rode out front gate. We went down an incline, made a right turn, and the barrels upset. And when we came to, we took off and run through the scrub pines, and then the guard opened up, and the 2 guys that escaped with me were killed. And I made it to the stream, and I went downstream because they turned the dogs loose at that time. And we used to have German shepherds about that big. They're good eating, and we killed one at one time and ate them, just the hindquarters, but it's not real good eating. Anyway, I made it, and I woke up the next morning and started east, and I traveled for about 6 or 8 days. I really don't know. And I went to a farmhouse and asked for some food, and they says, no, they couldn't give me any because if they did, the Germans would kill them or the Russians would kill them. So I went back and up in the hayloft and hid out, and that night the German armored outfit Russian armored outfit came back and bivouacked there for the night and partied, and I watched this whole thing, and I waited, and I didn't go down the first night. The second night they came back again. Then I went down and I met a Konsky Tovarish, and the commissar was the first guy I talked to that travels with the military, and he spoke some English, and I told him I was an American escaped prisoner of war, and I wanted to go with him and defeat Hitler. And he says, no, and I couldn't do it. Then the commander, the battalion commander came up, and he explained to her, and I butted in, I says, I want to go with you and defeat Hitler. And she says, da-da. I knew what that was. And Dolmetsch said no, and I couldn't. And she didn't outrank him, but she won. So she said I could, so I rode on a tank for about 30 days, and we went back and liberated the camp I escaped from. I have my prison record, plus the fact I blew the vault for the Soviet outfit, and I got all the American currency, French currency, English currency, and I had a satchel about that big. It was lashed to the tank I was riding on, and I was with them for about 30 days. We were going towards Berlin. One morning we started out, a beautiful morning, colder than hell. We had to keep the tanks running at night because they couldn't get them started. They were American Sherman tanks, by the way. We started out, and the Stukas came out of the sun I was blown off the tank, and I ended up in a Russian hospital. And while I was there, Marshal Zhukhov visited the hospital, and he came to my bed and through an interpreter wanted to know my name and how I got there. And I told him I was a paratrooper. I jumped in France, and all really anything I could tell him I figured would help me. And he didn't say anything, and he asked about my family and things like that. And the last thing he said, is there anything I can do for you? And I said, yes, I'd like to. I do not have an identification to prove I'm an American. I said, if you could give me some information. And he didn't say anything. The next day, the interpreter came back and handed me an envelope, a letter all in Russian. And I says, what does it say? He says, you don't have to know what it said. He says, that'll get you any place you want to go. So I took off for Warsaw, figuring there'd be an American embassy there. And when I got there, it was a pile of rubble. When I got off the convoy, hospital convoy, there was a Polish man standing there, and through my Polish and English, I said I was wounded, and I would like to be taken to a hospital. Well, he took me to a convent right in the middle of Warsaw, run by the Sisters of St. Joseph, and they were all nurses, and they cleaned my wounds up, and I stayed there for 3, 4, 5 days. And then I went on. This man came to visit me every day, and then one day I said, how about taking me over across the Vistula to the Soviet headquarters? And he said he would. He'd come back the next day, so I rode across the bridge. They'd blown a bridge, a temporary bridge, and went to the headquarters, showed them the letter, and said, I want to go to Moscow. Well, when you showed him that letter, all hell broke loose. And so he says, wait, and they had to get an officer, and the officer came, and I told him what I wanted, and he says, well, we'll get you on a hospital train going to Moscow. Okay. And that took us about 2 weeks, I think. Time didn't mean anything. And we got to Moscow, outskirts of Moscow, and I got off the hospital train. I told a Russian that I wanted to be taken to the Amerikansky headquarters.
Embassy?
Embassy.
Okay, yeah.
And he, again, he had to get an officer. The officer came. The officer came, and I was taken to the American Embassy by subway, and he told me they had the only subway in the world in Moscow. And I knew I'd been to Chicago and New York, and I knew that was, but I wasn't going to argue with him. Anyway, he took me to the embassy. It was in the National Hotel, and I went to the Marine Guard, and I told him the story, and he said, "Oops," he says, "Sergeant of the Guard, Sergeant of the Guard." Sergeant of the Guard come, and I told him the story, and he said, "Oh," he says, "I'll have to get the attaché." So the major came down, and I explained to him, and he says, "Okay," he says, "I'll take over." And they took me into the embassy and cleaned me up and fed me. And about the third or fourth day, they woke me up one morning and said, "Sergeant," he says, "we can't, I'm going to have to move you out of the embassy. We just got word that you were killed in action on the 10th of June in France from the Pentagon." And he says, "Until we can clear that up," he says, "I know you're an American because," he says, "I've debriefed you for almost 2 weeks now." So I said, they said I were going to take you to the Metropole Hotel. So they took me to the Metropole Hotel, put me under guard by 2 Marines, and I was there for about a week, and I finally said, "Fingerprint me," because I was fingerprinted when I came into service. And some days later, he came down to the Metropole, and he says, "We're going back to the embassy. We just got word that you were not killed in action. You were a prisoner of war from the International Red Cross." So that night I was all cleaned up. I had dinner with Abro Harriman and some general officers who had accumulated, and they flew us to Odessa, Russia, and I came home by way of Odessa